All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for a couple of real people out there just like you and just like me. All right, going to be talking about how Jimmy Buffett now is more popular than he was when he was alive, and it kind of irritates me, and I'll talk about some things. Before I get to that discussion, here's Kinfo, laid back country band from Texas. The song Sunny and 72, one of my favorite tracks off of this collection. Had the boys on the show, I don't know how many months ago. Really a bunch of fun guys. No, they're not bacteria, okay? They're good guys. And a bunch of really great songs. My only complaint here is you get 6 songs on this, but you can go listen to Kinfo, F-A-U-X, as they pretend to be kin. They say they are kind of like Charlie Daniels meets Alabama. I don't know. I just think it's pretty unique, pretty interesting, and easy on the ears, right? Just like modern retro radio, modernretrofm.com, playing all the music that other radio stations don't have the courage to play. And speaking of laid back, the discussion about Jimmy Buffett. All right. So this article, let me read a portion of this article. Beloved island rock troubadour Jimmy Buffett died earlier this month, leaving behind, if absolutely nothing else, a legacy of some damn good songs that perfectly capture and define a specific laid-back, beachy vibe. And as is usually the case when an artist with that kind of catalog dies, a lot of people are going back and listening to their hits. Great, huh? In fact, so many people are checking out Buffett's songs by heart, Jimmy Buffett's greatest hit, and then they have an S. If you're familiar with the album, I think that was a tongue-in-cheek move, but certainly acknowledging that pretty much only Billboard magazine would care about one song, apparently, and most people only care about one song. The collection, which came out in 1985, cracked the top 10 on Billboard for the first time ever. This is recently. It's in the top 10. And so, I should do an eye roll here because that's how I feel. I'm like, that line in the Don Henley song Dirty Laundry where he says, it's interesting when people die. Give us dirty laundry, right? It's interesting when people die. We're going to go listen to Jimmy Buffett now that he's dead. The problem with that is Jimmy can't do concerts anymore because he's dead. Now, I understand the Coral Reefer Band, they're going to continue, and I know they've been out there paying tribute to Jimmy already, which I think is fine, and people are going to keep seeing the Coral Reefer Band, but the master of ceremonies is gone. The man who was running a party every time he was on stage, he's no longer here to entertain. And that's really sad. And in the case of Jimmy Buffett, I think it's even more egregious because for like 30 years, the guy was on a record label that didn't do anything to promote his music, like zero. It's actually surprising that Margaritaville did as well as it did. How did Come Monday get into the top 30? Such a great song. Everybody who knows that song says, wow, it's like a tearjerker. It's one of those super well-written singer-songwriter moments where you can relate. He tells this story, and come Monday, everything's going to be all right, But quite honestly, this Songs You Know by Heart album, that came out in 1985, and it was a smart move by the record label. They consolidated all of the more well-known Buffett songs. According to them, quite honestly, they could have assembled a better group of songs, in my humble opinion, but they did fairly well. I mean, Cheeseburger in Paradise and Fins, and Volcano. There are some very notable sing-along party-type songs that people at least who loved Jimmy Buffett, knew by heart, hence the name of the album. But Jimmy Buffett came out with albums all the time. And when I was working in radio, I think it was 1988, 87, in that time frame, our radio station was really an outlier. We did weird things. And we were in a market where people loved Jimmy Buffett. So Jimmy came out with this album, Hot Water, and we put a couple of tracks on the air, and the record label called me and they're like, you're playing Jimmy Buffett? That's weird. And I'm like, why is it weird? Well, you're the only rock station in, this particular area of the northeastern part of the United States. And I'm like, look, we have this audience that, they like Led Zeppelin, they like the Rolling Stones, and they like Jimmy Buffett. And this is what drives me crazy with record labels in those days. I think it's gotten far worse now because you can't even get somebody who's a vintage artist on the radio unless, of course, you're listening to modern retro radio. They do that kind of thing. But for the most part, the terrestrial radio business is all like centrally planned, which central planning, when it comes to politics and music, everything is central planning now. You just need to get with the program. If you're in Toledo, you'll hear the same music you hear in Tulsa. There'll be no difference. Just the call letters will be different. The local announcers will be different. By the way, all of the announcing is done probably from that person's home, and they're probably not doing it live. They probably send all the files, they record all their voice tracks, and they send them over, and they drop them in. The computer probably takes care of that, just drops them in all the appropriate places, and you get your community service bulletin board. This way, you don't have to worry about coming out of a break and sounding intelligent, talking about what the audience was just listening to. Because the music is so old, it doesn't matter. You don't have to tell anybody what, plus their radio does that for them. If they got the radio that tells them what song they're listening to, they don't really need a DJ anymore. That's just crazy. So I get some of that, but I do miss the old school way of listening to radio. In the case of Jimmy Buffett, like 30 or 40 years worth of great music that was ignored. So yes, he's got this great catalog. The person here, they acknowledge that he's got a great catalog. And, they even acknowledge the fact that when somebody of this caliber dies, that's when they're going to get noticed. The problem is Jimmy Buffett isn't here to appreciate that, nor is he here to play to a growing fan base, which thanks to his death has now gotten interested in his music, maybe for the first time. Well, Dave, that's just part of the cycle of life. Somebody dies and then people want to listen to their music. Well, see, this is a missed opportunity because of the way the record industry treated Jimmy Buffett for many years. Almost every album the guy put out, he had radio material, worthy radio material. In some cases, multiple songs. And he got better and better when it came to the production value of his albums. The material was maybe, in the old days, maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 really good songs on an album. And then later on, it was more like 7 or 8 really good songs on an album. So the guy just got better and better, but the record industry didn't acknowledge that. And by the time he got really, really good, it didn't matter anymore. They weren't interested. They knew he was kind of his own thing, and he had so many fans that just putting the album out there was enough, and they treated him like that even during the 1980s when his style fell out of fashion, which if you're a Buffett head or Parrot head, none of that ever really fell out of fashion with you. But yeah, the production changed in the 80s and it was more keyboard driven. But, Buffett's songwriting and what he wanted to accomplish on an album, that was pretty much intact. He just went through that whole 80s thing and came out the other side and was still Jimmy Buffett and still had his fan base. In fact, the fan base started to grow thanks to radio stations that were independent and also word of mouth and the live concerts, which were legendary. So to me, it was just kind of weird to read this about how, like so many other artists, I remember when the Doors, when it was Jim Morrison died, the Doors got bigger after Jim Morrison. And then they had a revival. The record label put out some material in the mid 1980s. I remember in Massachusetts, we had Hurricane Gloria. Every radio station, every rock station, as that hurricane approached, they were playing Gloria by the Doors, not by Van Morrison and the original, which I think was his band called Them back in the 60s. And I'm sure it's been covered by a number of other people. Of course, Jim Morrison kind of freaks out during that song, and you don't hear that song on the radio anymore, and rightfully so, because his version is just a little bit too X-rated, I would say. At least his vocal delivery, just not for family audiences. But all I'm saying is that the Doors were more popular after Jim Morrison died. And I think Jim Morrison, I think he was on the cover of Rolling Stone, and they're like, he's sexy, he's got this great voice, and he's dead, So they're promoting the dead guy. Like, this is cool. We should all get into the dead guy's music. Doors never went on without Jim Morrison. I think they did an album or two without him, and they didn't turn out so well. But the legacy, the legend kept growing. And Jimmy Buffett didn't need any kind of boost as far as his career. He was a billionaire, and he did most of that on his own. What I'm a little offended at is the radio industry, the record industry just ignored the guy for so long. And now he's dead and he's selling records. So I think it's a dichotomy. It's a reality that there's no real escape from. It's just what people do. And in some ways, I get it. It's like you're in mourning, so I'm going to go buy some Jimmy Buffett music, right? And that will eventually fade away, I think. In the case of Buffett, he's got so much material that maybe people won't get tired of discovering new music by Jimmy Buffett. The other issue that really drives me crazy, the Classic Rock Radio Network, the iHeart Classic Rock World, will say, hey, Jimmy Buffett has a new song. It's called Bubbles Up. It's a good song. Are they going to play that song? Of course not. Of course not. And this is so offensive to me because, okay, you call yourself a classic rock station, and it doesn't have to be old to be a classic. Go listen to the song and then put it next to a Jimmy Buffett song that you might play on the radio. Now, that would be what, Margaritaville? And that would be it. So these people are almost promoting things that they're really not all that interested in supporting. That's why I say the radio industry today doesn't have a plan B. It just is going to continue to play the same songs and just hit them into the ground for as long as they can. And maybe someday there won't be enough people that want to listen to those songs anymore, as those people kind of age out of the system and are no longer here on planet Earth to support them, because there is no second wave of this material that's coming. And I think that's what's frightening to me as a fan of music, that maybe within 5 or 10 years, nobody's going to care about this music anymore. And so that's frustrating as well. And that's why I promote new stuff. That's why I talk about bands that people have never heard of. Music from the great state of Texas, for instance. This is country-ish stuff. But, if you're a fan of Jimmy Buffett, you might like to hear Sunny in 72. Sounds kind of like something Buffett would write himself. So in any event, folks, all that to say that it's sad when people die. obviously. And it's made worse because it seems as though people only care about what that person did after they die. I think that's the theme to this, but it's human nature, apparently. Don Henley had it right. It is interesting when people die, but I would say try to find a great living artist that you can support, somebody who's still around, who you can appreciate, and get into their music before they're no longer here and they can't perform live. And it's just, the way life ought to be. But obviously, we're just going to continue to kind of worship people when it's too late. So in any event, folks, to make a long story even longer, relish the good stuff while it's here. Get into it while it's here. And for you radio guys and you promoters out there, the only way, I guess, to get music, older music into, the public sphere so people listen to it and hear it is maybe, do some TikTok videos or something of Jimmy Buffett songs. I don't know what you can do, but there's got to be a way to, expose this current generation to some real music, because the radio industry, they're kind of done trying to promote stuff, and they have no interest going back into the catalog and pulling out all of this great music and adding it to their playlists. I mean, that would be heresy. Oh no, the focus testers say nobody's going to like this Jimmy Buffett song because they weren't listening to it 30 years ago or 40 years ago. You're not giving people any credit. You're not, and this is what drives me crazy about the radio business is there's no creativity. Nobody takes any chances, and nobody trusts the music, right? They trust the advertisers more than they trust the music. So that's my 2 cents worth on that. All right. I've gone way too long on this video. Again, one more time for Kinfo. I showed this before a couple of times now. And go listen to Sunny in 72. This album is called Cheaper Than the Truth. And you should go listen and support new artists that would keep this thing going. Because like I say, there's no second wave as far as the music business goes. See you soon.